Welcome back to another educational video. Today we're going to be talking about what the future of work looks like in the white-collar field, and then also how to find a remote job in 2024 with the disaster that the current job market is. So why am I just talking about white-collar jobs? And what I mean by white-collar is pretty much anyone that's got a desk in an office. And so that could mean lawyer, accountant, insurance person, etc. I work a white-collar job myself. And so I can't talk about blue-collar jobs because I've never worked one before. And so within the job market for white-collar jobs in 2024, there are two main factors that I see influencing job postings, etc., etc. So the one on the left is kind of obvious. We're talking about the rise of artificial intelligence tools. And yes, we can have endless debates about how complex they are and how effective they are in replacing people, but jobs already have been replaced, and jobs will continue to be replaced as these tools grow in complexity. And so that's on the left. And then on the right, we have another factor called the return to office attitude that a lot of companies are starting to implement now. And so during the pandemic, obviously everything was virtual because the pandemic forced everyone to work remotely from home. And then people were actually able to get their work done without having to go into an office, which surprised a lot of stakeholders, a lot of CFOs, a lot of CEOs, you know what I mean? Like pretty much like the head honchos of these big companies. And so people love working from home because they don't have to commute, they don't have to waste money on gas, they don't have to pack a lunch before heading into the office. But unfortunately, there is a trend now where since the pandemic was officially declared over, I don't even remember when, like this year, maybe last year. But the point is that there is a full RTO, return to office, depending on where you work. Some sectors, like the private sector, are quicker to implement it than others in, like, let's say, the public sector. So this return to the office is having a lot of people really reconsider what they want in a job. So I just talked about this on the previous slide, but there are basically three types of white-collar work that are currently happening right now, right? So the first is the best one in my opinion. I love remote working because you get to work from home. You don't have to go into the office. You don't have to either drive your car to the office, take public transportation, etc., etc. So the first one is obviously remote working. You can work from home so long as obviously you get your work done. That's the most important part. Remote working is a privilege that a lot of us were granted, over the past couple of years in the white-collar field, and now it's slowly being kind of phased out. And so the second is the more common type of white-collar work, which you'll see nowadays, which is called hybrid. So for example, certain friends of mine are in the office, let's say 1, 2, 3 days a week, and then the rest they can work from home. This is what we call like a hybrid work setting, where you are working in the office a couple days a week, and then the rest you can work from home. Obviously, that will depend on which sector you work in, etc., etc. And then the third, which is the worst one, is the full return to the office, full RTO. And unfortunately, a lot of major companies are going this way, which, again, as I hinted before, are really forcing people to reconsider what they want in a job, a career. How much does remote working mean to them versus being paid more, etc., etc. So today, I'm going to be talking about how do you find a remote job in 2024? Is it possible? Is it not possible? Is it too late? Is it not too late? All of these are good questions, and we can walk through how you can potentially find remote jobs, but you got to be careful, and I'll explain what I mean later on. So chances are, if you've been job hunting, you've seen articles like this across the internet, how ghost job postings are creating a false sense of hope. This sickens me as an early to mid-career professional in his own field. And what I mean by ghost job postings is, let's say you go on LinkedIn, which we will also do in this presentation as well, and you try to apply for jobs. You find your dream job in whatever sector, right? You apply for it thinking you're actually applying for a job, when in reality, that job posting is fake, and a recruiter behind the scenes just simply collects your information for future jobs on hand, or in case another applicant doesn't work out. Basically, you're submitting your information to a talent pool and not an actual job that you think you are doing. And so, according to some research that I've done for this particular presentation, this was always a common occurrence, I believe 5 to 10 years ago, but now it's really gotten out of control, especially with inflation going through the roof, wages not going as high as they need to be to keep up with the cost of living in certain cities across the United States. And companies know that people that want to work remote, for example, often bring a certain amount of experience and skill set to the table. So companies know that remote jobs are going to attract people with a lot of, like, let's say, high degree talent and high degree experience. And so these ghost job postings are bad enough for normal jobs, like let's say hybrid and in person, but for remote, it's even worse, because they know for a fact that when anyone sees remote job, they will automatically apply for it because, let's be honest, working from home is awesome. You know what I mean? Like, instead of having to go into the office, you can work remotely from home for 5 days. Like, how awesome does that sound? And so when you're applying for a remote job, there are certain factors that you have to keep in mind, and I will tell you more about these. When you're applying for like a remote job and you want to determine whether or not it's fake or real. So after listening to a bunch of podcasts and kind of looking at the news articles that are out there, there are 4 factors when evaluating a true remote job from like a fake one that's just meant to collect your information. And I know I have 5 on here, but that's LinkedIn specific. I'm just talking about 4 in general for now. So the first one is when you're looking at a remote job, let's say like through LinkedIn as an example, right? Because I just referenced it. You can often click on apply and then it redirects you to the company website. Do your research, because certain companies that are out there, like with especially ones that are well known for these ghost job postings, like their company website like is really terrible. Sometimes it looks like it was designed out of the 1980s instead of 2024. You know what I mean? Like, you can tell when something is like off. So like a big red flag, or a big red factor, if we want to call it that, is that if they don't have a good company website and it looks like someone 5 years old designed it, or it looks incredibly archaic from like the 80s or something like that, chances are they're not doing an actual remote job posting. So that's the first like big factor. The second is Glassdoor reviews. So for those of you who don't know, Glassdoor is a website where people can submit reviews on companies that they have worked at. And it's incredibly fascinating because apparently Glassdoor was acquired by a certain company that I can't remember the name of like when I'm talking right now. But the whole point of Glassdoor was to be anonymous. And apparently now you have to write your full name when you're giving a review of a company. So Glassdoor may fall out of favor with a lot of people pretty soon, but you can determine whether or not the place that you want to apply a remote job at, for example, is a great place to work at by reading Glassdoor reviews. So they've got like 5 stars, then they break down the reviews by certain like sectors like work culture, remote work, etc., etc. So just do yourself a favor and look. You don't have to like create an account, because I think you can just go on Glassdoor and just see like what the reviews are. But like, for example, if it's anything less than like, 3.5, 4 stars, typically you don't really want to work there. I'm just being honest. So the third factor to consider is remote work culture. So in my analysis of like kind of a lot of companies that I've been looking into, for example, just to see like if they're remote work friendly is the term, it says right on their website, like, we allow anyone to work from across the world, so long as they get their work done and they can work during like certain core hours. So that's what I mean by remote work culture, or being remote work friendly. It's directly written on their website, and not a lot of companies do that, but some do. You just gotta kind of dig through their main like good company website. The fourth is how recent the job posting is. You know, this is not exactly remote work specific, it's just in general too. Like, for example, if you're in a certain, like, let's say you're in Florida, right? And you're applying for jobs that are like a month old, 2 months old. Be honest, like with the amount of people that are searching for a job right now, anything that's over, let's say maybe 2 weeks old, might not be worth applying for. Like if it's a month old, chances are they've already filled the position. A lot of companies forget to take down the job posting once they've hired for it, etc., etc. And then the fifth one, which is kind of a secret one, or just a fun one, is LinkedIn specific. So how many applicants? So unfortunately, there are so many people that want a remote job right now that when you look, like LinkedIn has the ability to tell you like how many applicants there are, right? Like if it's above, I don't know, let's say like there's no like limit or whatever, right? But like if it's like 100 to 150, anything above may not necessarily be worth it. You know what I mean? Because like think about it, like 100 to 150 other people that might have PhDs, that might have 10 to 15 years of experience. You know what I mean? Like, you lose nothing but time by applying. I understand that, but you have to be realistic because it's your time that you're using to apply for these jobs. So these 5 factors, or 4 if you want to call them that, can really help you kind of evaluate like a true remote job from the fake ones that are out there. And it's a process that you should use, and it will take time because to find a true remote job is a real gold nugget nowadays. But you can find them. They are out there, but you have to put in a large amount of time to kind of vet the whole like job process, if that makes sense. So I'm going to show you which platforms that are the most useful for finding remote jobs. And I know I kind of dissed LinkedIn a little bit like on the previous slide, but the fact remains that LinkedIn is built for job hunting and they have options that you can use to find remote jobs. And so the red arrow has factors that you can use. So for example, we have past week, remote, salary, experience level, company, easy apply. So when you're applying for remote jobs specifically, I would recommend kind of the following approach. And so the first one is filtering for like, let's say the past week. I believe they give you like past week, past 2 weeks, past month, that type of thing. Try to stick to like past week, past 2 weeks. Second is the location. So if you're interested in just finding remote jobs, they have an option, literally as you can see, called remote. Select that. And then salary, of course, is the most, well, not the most, but salary is an important factor that you need to consider when you're job hunting just in general. Or if you have become unfortunately unemployed as a result of layoffs or whatever, sometimes you don't have a choice. I understand that. But if you have a job and you're just kind of looking right now, just keep in mind what salary you're being paid and what you want to be paid, but be realistic. So that's a factor too. And then the fourth one is location. So there's a big difference between being able to work remotely from anywhere across the world and then being able to work, let's say, from the town that you're in, the state that you're in, or even from the United States, because that's where I'm based out of. And so when you're looking at remote jobs, do your homework on where specifically it says you can work remotely from. On the previous slide, I mentioned the remote work friendliness culture that a lot of companies like say on their website, or they don't. And in some cases they say like, oh, we have employees all over the world, so long as you get your work done and you're available during these core hours. That's what you should be paying attention to when you're applying for remote jobs. Because a lot of companies will say like, oh, we have remote jobs, and then you actually apply, you get the job, and you, let's say, want to be a digital nomad and you want to work out of like Ecuador for 3 months, and they're just like, no, you can't do that. You actually have to be remote from like, the state of Florida, which is what you're currently based in, for example. So just be aware of that. But that's kind of the general thought process when you're applying for, or when you're trying to find remote jobs through LinkedIn. One word of caution that I want to give you before we move on to the next idea is the Easy Apply button. And so I've used it in the past, and what Easy Apply is basically when you just you hit Easy Apply, it opens up a box, you submit your CV, and then that's it. There's some controversy with the Easy Apply function and whether or not it actually works in like helping you get a job. It's obviously very convenient when all you have to do is just submit your CV. But I've watched like recruiter videos about like, don't do Easy Apply because like all it just is a way to collect your information for these recruiters and keep your CV in a talent pool just in case. So something to like think about, because like if you're using the Easy Apply option to apply for jobs, chances are like 99% of the competition that you're going up against is also doing the same thing. Because when you're using the Easy Apply feature, I believe all you have to do is just submit a CV. But to stand out from like the crowd, a cover letter is sometimes good, transcripts are better, or if you're in college or whatever, a portfolio is good to have as well. So just something to consider also when you're just job hunting just in general. So the second platform is called Flexjobs. And so Flexjobs, according to the website, they say they're the number one job site for remote jobs. I'm not exactly sure about that. But it's a very useful website to find remote jobs through. And so there is a caveat with this website. So you know how LinkedIn has like LinkedIn Pro and like LinkedIn Pro may or may not be useful, but you basically buy the membership to be able to look who's like looking at your like profile and all that stuff. So Flexjobs has a membership that you can participate in and buy. And then they let you see like the full range of jobs that they offer through their job board. So what I like about Flexjobs is the fact that they vet which remote jobs that they have. So for example, with LinkedIn, it's not the job of LinkedIn to fully vet all the jobs that they're getting. And that's part of the problem. Like a lot of the job boards that I'll mention, let's say on the next slide, their job is just to post the job details that they get because they get paid for it. That's the whole point of having a job board in the first place. So with Flexjobs, they say that they vet which job postings that they actually talk about. So at least you have that sense of ease when you're going through Flexjobs to apply for remote jobs. And so Flexjobs operates in a very similar respect. You can filter by location, by subject area, but what I really like is that they provide a bunch of resources that you can look into. So for example, I've seen lists of like 160 companies that are hiring for remote jobs. They're in different sectors, so it's not all about like software engineering, which you like see a lot of remote jobs in. There's communications, etc., etc. So ultimately it's up to you whether or not you want to pay for Flexjobs or LinkedIn. If you're in a bind and you're trying to really like find one before your unemployment runs out or whatever, it may be worth it. But at the same time, they have a free option. It's just restricted, if that makes sense. But I'd recommend using Flexjobs and LinkedIn, at least the free version, until you can find something that necessitates like the usage of their paid plan. So truth be told, there are a million job boards out there. You know what I mean? Like there are job boards for literally anything. But these are a couple of the ones that I've just seen kind of popping around. So you have remote.co, you have Arc, which I believe is primarily just for software engineering, Just Remote, Virtual Vocations, We Work Remotely, and Working Nomads, I believe is a newsletter that just sends out like remote jobs every now and then. So these remote jobs that I've listed, I have never used before. I've used LinkedIn and Flexjobs in the past to like find remote jobs. And these ones I haven't used personally, but I figured it would be better to let you know that they exist, and then you can also filter depending on which sector you're in. So a lot of remote jobs, let's say for example, are in software engineering. Arc is better for that because they exclusively, I believe, focus in software engineering. So just something to consider when you're applying for jobs remotely. So I put my head in the middle of the slide with this funny cartoon on purpose, and there's a reason for this. The reason is that applying for jobs in 2024 has gotten ridiculously hard and complicated, and it's even worse for people that want to get entry-level jobs but have no experience whatsoever. So my cautionary tale to you is if you're looking for a job, please start early. Like the best time to have a job is when you have one, you know what I mean? And if you start early, typically it takes about 3 to 6 months to get a new job, assuming you're just kind of like applying randomly and you're just kind of interested, you know what I mean? If you're networking and stuff like that, it might be a little bit shorter, it might be a little bit longer. But my point to you is this: start early, especially if you're trying to apply for a remote job, because Lord knows there's so much competition out there in whatever sector you're in, it's going to take you a while to find one. Rejection is part of the game. I know that in my previous job cycle hunting, like with previous eras in my life, I ended up applying for 600 jobs, I think, or some ridiculous number. And guess what? I think according to the spreadsheet that I had in that one particular cycle back in 2021, maybe 2022, I ended up getting a 5% approval rate, which means that I was getting yeses for interviews and stuff like that. So my point to you is this: start early if you want to find a remote job, if you want to find a new job. Rejection is part of the game for all of you that are in your early, careers out there as well. It's normal to get rejected. It happens all the time. You're going to get more no's than yeses, but if you keep at it over a consistent amount of time, you'd be surprised, honestly. I've had jobs in my life that have come out of the blue, and even if they say no at first, there's always a strong possibility that you can somehow get the job 6 months later. I remember one time there was a company that I was applying for. They said no, we already decided on someone, even though it was like 3 rounds in. And then half a year later, the candidate that they hired for the job ended up getting laid off because he wasn't doing the work right, or he was lazy, or he was just a bad fit for the company. So they came back 6 months later and they were just like, hey, do you want this job yet? And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I have my job right now for a reason. I'm not just gonna turn tail and go to y'all because like you said that you wanted to hire me after your first choice that you picked did not work out. So I'm your second. I'm worth more than that. Obviously, it'll depend on your situation, but just start early. Rejection is part of the game. And my third piece of advice is be aware of the strategy that you're using when you're applying for jobs and remote jobs in general. So for example, there are 2 approaches that I've used in the past. The first is spaghetti on the wall approach to try to see who says yes. And it depends on your situation and how desperate you are. Obviously, if you're unemployed and your savings are running dry, you take anything you can get. That's, of course, that's like natural. So that spaghetti on the wall approach is the most commonly used one, but it also carries the most amount of no's because think about it. Let's say you're a risk analyst working for a business, right? But then you want to be a coder or something like that in the tech field. So you apply randomly in the hopes of getting a yes in an interview to try to get past the first round. But you're going to end up applying to 4 times as many jobs if you don't exactly know what you want to do. So that's the spaghetti on the wall approach. The second is a more lasered, targeted approach where, of course, it'll depend on your situation, but you know roughly what you want to do. For example, let's say you have an interest in communications, right? And you know that you're really good at using social media. You're a great writer. You use active voice instead of passive, all these great things, and you have some video editing skills. Obviously, talking about people in the world out there. But you can specifically target the industry that you want to get into or your own, you never know because you're allowed to pivot. And then you have those skills that you know that you can do, and it clearly shows that on your CV. So just be aware of that. Spaghetti on the wall approach versus a more laser targeted approach, because I promise you, I've done both of those strategies, and the one that's more targeted, granted both take an extremely long period of time, still trying to figure out what I want to do, but the thing is that the targeted approach will probably yield you a greater chance of success when you want to find the remote job that you've always wanted or just a job in general. So please keep your head up. The job market in 2024 sucks, frankly, especially with inflation, layoffs, all that good stuff. I hope all these resources that I've presented to you in this presentation, help you in some regard. If you have more questions, feel free to leave comments down below. And I really wish you the best of luck in finding a remote job in 2024. Like, share, and subscribe for more content. See you next time.